I'd still like to call the August 16th meeting to order. Krista,
Yes.
are we here in compliance with the Freedom of Information?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you very much. Could you do the roll call, please?
I sure will. Mr. Brown?
I am here.
Mr. Harkins?
Here.
Mr. Ames?
Here.
Mrs. Becker? Here. Mr. Lennox?
Here.
Mr. Stanford?
Here.
Mayor McCann?
Here.
All present, sir.
Mr. Hawkins on the phone, on a link?
Mr. Harkins is on the link. He's
Okay.
up there. Can you see him in the corner?
Okay, thank you, thank you. Can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Communication will be given today by Pastor Jeff Goff.
I'm sure I speak for others. Thank you for your work. We pray. Almighty God, you've given us this good land as our heritage. Grant that we remember your generosity and constantly do your will. Bless our land with honest industry, truthful education, and an honorable way of life. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil course of action. Grant that we who came from many nations with many different languages may become a united people. Support us in defending our liberties, and give those to whom we have entrusted the authority of government the spirit of wisdom, that there may be justice and peace in our land. When times are prosperous, may our hearts be thankful, and in troubled times, do not let our trust in you fail. We pray this and all things in your almighty name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Gonna move it. Approval of minutes from July 19th.
Option is written.
Any changes or subtractions, additions? Okay. Mr. Orlando, report of the town manager.
Yes, sir. Members of council, members of the community, good afternoon. A couple of things for items of interest. We will have a town council strategic plan workshop September 8th at the Westin Island Resort and Spa from 9 to 3. Public's welcome. It's a day for me and my team to review the progress of our initiatives in the fiscal year 21-22 strategic action plan, and have a discussion with town council on the prioritization of projects over the next several months leading into the end of the year, and then to start talking about next calendar year work plan. Congrats to Lana Soderman. Lana here. Okay, but Lana works in our business license department, and she just earned her accreditation in business licensing, which is a difficult thing to do. 3-year business license official training through the institute at the state, and then she passed her accreditation in business licensing. So congrats to her and to a great staff member. Chief Tadlock, I know you're here. There you are. A retirement announcement, and it's a lot of mixed feelings. Chief keeps trying to convince me that it's his time to leave, and I keep trying to convince him how much we need him. But after 8 years as our fire chief, Chief Tadlock has decided to retire. His last day is October 3rd. We will celebrate you definitely before, and I know your legacy will live on with your leadership lessons and your ability to lead and manage and promote this organization the way you have. A couple things that Chief's done through time, and I have pages of it on my desk. Reinstating the EMS division in 2017, guiding the department through 2 reaccreditation cycles in 17 and 22, improving the rating, the ISO rating from 3 to 2, and I didn't even yet mention Hurricane Matthew and COVID-19. So I know a lot of that has always been on your shoulders, and you've led well, and I've looked up to you from afar, and it's been great to work with you for the last year and a half, so thank you for all you do. I missed the part where you've been with us for 34 years. Chief, you don't look 34. How does that happen? So, a couple new teammates here at the town, a lot of great staff members joining. I see Nick Tay here, who works in planning. I do want to share with you today a few senior staff members. Mac Defford, I saw Mac. It's this snazzy suit in the back room. He recently joined us from Mount Pleasant as the Associate General Counsel, and Mac is here with us as the Staff Attorney General Counsel with us. Mac will work very closely with Curtis Coltrane, his office, Josh, and all of us as we work to accomplish those elements of the strategic plan. Tom Sunday, there's Tom. Tom, you stand for a sec so we can recognize you and welcome you. Hello, sir. Tom is our Director of Technology and Innovation. He's got considerable experience in the technology field, and most recently, he was the Chief Technology Officer for the town of Bluffton. He's been with Beaufort County School District and the Rutherford Regional Health System and hit the ground running, especially when our Wi-Fi went down today, and Tom and his team quickly found out what the problem was. So good job, Tom, and you passed the first test. And last but not least, Mr. Bob Bromage, Director of Public Safety. We've been talking about, I guess I don't even need to continue. We've been talking about bringing on board a Director of Public Safety for some time. We talked a lot about it at budget. We talked a lot about it as we worked on our short-term rental program, our community safety code enforcement program. And I'm very pleased to have Bob here with me and with us, more than 31 years of law enforcement. Bob, thanks for your service, first and foremost. Thanks for joining us. Bob most recently was ranked as a major, served as the Public Information Officer for Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, and led the cold case files. And thank you, sir. I will call upon Ms. Patsy Bryson, our Board of Zoning Appeals Chair. Thank you, Ms. Bryson, for all you do, and you're here to give the biannual report.
Yes, sir. I know you've got a lot of things to attend to, a lot of people interested in something other than a dull report from me, so I'll try to be brief. First of all, I want to thank the other board members who served with me. I saw Dr. Anna Ponder in the parking lot. She serves as our vice chair. Also, Charlie Walczak, Bob Johnson, David Fingerhut, Peter Christian, and our new member, Kay Bayless. So thank you for the appointment of Kay Bayless to join our board. And I also want to honor Lisa Loudermilk, who served for 2 terms on our board as a great board member. Also want to continue to serve with them. They're a great team, and thank you very much for that opportunity. I also want to thank some town staff, especially I know Missy Lewick is here in the audience, and I really appreciate the work that she did with us, as well as Teresa Haley, who was our board secretary. They both got well-deserved promotions, and we congratulate them and wish them well. We miss them, and we thank them for their service. And we look forward to continuing to work with the town manager and his staff as we serve as your Board of Zoning Appeals. You have before you the written report. I'm not going to read that to you. I will note that we did consider 6 variance requests, no appeals during the first 6 months, and 1 special exception request. In addition, we have reports every time we meet on the status of any appeals from our Board of Zoning Appeals to the Circuit Court, or even up from that, from the town's attorney. And we also ask for status on LMO amendments, which we had requested about 2.5 years ago. And I want to today thank the Public Planning Committee for moving at least 2 of those amendments, actually, that we had suggested be reviewed. And now they've moved on to the LMO Committee of the Planning Commission. So thank you to the Public Planning Committee for moving those amendments along. Also want to, again, thank Ms. Lewick and also the town manager for helping us move along amendments to our rules of procedure, which greatly affect our hearing process. Welcome amendments, and I think they will serve the board well in future years. But we also enjoy a policy of continuous improvement. So if we see further needs in our rules of procedure or suggestions in the LMO, we'll continue to make those with all due respect. And I'd be happy to address any questions you might have of me.
Any questions for Patsy? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And then lastly, Miss Angie Stone, who's our Assistant Town Manager and heads up our communications program, to provide a brief update on things that we're doing to get our message out and connect better and be more involved in the community. So, you know, arguably this is communicating about communicating. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orlando. Good afternoon, Mayor, Town Council. It's a pleasure to be here. I know it said it was a quarterly report, but this is my first time, so it's a whole year, but I'll keep it short. First, I wanted to just let you know we're going to talk a little bit about the progress we've made in FY22 to elevate the level of our communications. And this would not be possible without a team of really talented professionals, Carolyn Grant, Kelly Spinella, and Renee Tuttle, who all work across multiple platforms to ensure that we get information out to the folks who need to know what's going on, what's available, and to communicate about how we're working to advance our strategic initiatives. So first, yes, okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that we did that really flows across all of our communication efforts, and that is to enhance our ability to communicate with everyone, regardless of language spoken, regardless of ability to speak or hear at all. We implemented interpretation services this year. They're available to all of our staff in the field, in the office, and provide us ability to communicate in over 240 languages, including American Sign Language. Now, we've only had this in place for a very short period, but we've already utilized it across several departments and have utilized Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin. And this has enabled us to be able to communicate at the time of contact with someone instead of having to try to come back later when someone was available to speak to us in English. So this has been tremendously helpful to us. In addition to our interpretation services, we have begun translating much more to Spanish than we have before. We've also implemented Google Translate on our website to ensure that people have access to our web information in all languages, and have created a mini Spanish site that will allow folks to get information that is directly translated to Spanish where there is code or emergency service implications. We've also translated all of our forms to Spanish to enable folks to fill those out more easily. So our website statistics, you may remember, we launched a brand new, refreshed, mobile-friendly site last year. And what we have found is that most of our traffic is coming through on mobile devices. So we made a very good move last year when we did this. We had over 2 million visitors in the last year. Lots of information is being accessed this way. We've got all departments participating in this. So we're collaborating across the organization. Our IT group, our Technology and Innovation group, supports us a great deal with GIS information, bringing the stories to life with maps. So we've got a great team across the organization that's helping with these efforts to communicate. You can see here what the highest hits are on our pages. Most of it, town council, COVID information, public parks and pathways, and also our permits and licensing. This is website traffic for our mini Spanish site. Again, this has only been in place for a short period of time, but we've already had a good number of visitors. And one of the things that struck me is one of the highest hits there is on the Contact Us page. So we've got people who are now able to access information on how to contact us much more easily. We also have posters and placards in all of our lobbies that let folks know that interpretation services are available. We're going to do an envelope stuffer to send out with business licenses and other communications that, again, lets folks know that translation and interpretation services are available. So we've made efforts across all of our platforms to modernize our communications without losing touch with folks who prefer traditional communication methods. Our social media has grown tremendously over the last year. We have grown our audience to over 63,000 folks. We've got tons of people who are interacting with us, and some of that engagement or that growth is due to Kelly Spinella's diligence in responding to and acknowledging comments and really creating that rapport with our fans, our followers. Email marketing, this is really more our traditional gov delivery, so folks can come to our website and sign up for topics that they're interested in to receive our news releases, to receive information on very specific topics. We've got a huge following here. We've got 31,000 subscribers, and we've grown that by 11% in this last year. We send out about 400 bulletins a year, and we have a huge open rate. So we've got folks who are signed up and who are accessing the information when it comes into their inboxes. Additional, more traditional methods of communication, we have a variety of campaigns and collateral that we've been involved in developing. You may recognize some of this, the redistricting effort, COVID-19, short-term rentals, all of these initiatives that the town took part in. The communications team worked closely with those departments to develop collateral that could be passed out, door hangers, information again in English and Spanish to ensure that folks who need the information are able to access it. We've even done, we've gone back to the real basics. Carolyn and I showed up at the Sandalwood Food Pantry one morning and handed out brochures on the home repair and sewer connection. And we had 2 or 3 people come in that day and the next day with applications. So we're hitting every avenue we can to ensure that we're getting the message out there. Media and interviews. Carolyn also reaches out to her contacts throughout the area and pitches stories about our initiatives. We've had tons of folks do interviews, and we've been mentioned in quite a few publications throughout the year. Thank you for allowing me to quickly run through a year's worth of efforts on behalf of a very professional and amazing team of women who have done a lot to elevate our communications and build trust with the community. Are there any questions? Any questions?
Alex?
Well, I ditto the round of applause for the communications team's efforts. I know at one point we were not able to broadcast via Facebook or other means any other public meetings besides town council meetings. Is that still the case, or?
We are working on that. Mr. Sunday joined us yesterday, and that's one of his first assignments is to ensure that we can get that done.
Okay, well, you got the internet going today, so I'm sure you can cover that. I think communication is the key, and now that we are pushing a lot of work downstream, planning commission and et cetera, and staff is intimately involved in those discussions, I think it will help community members with getting real information versus misinformation. So the sooner the better we get that part done, where the community can engage with our boards and commissions, I think the better off we'll be. So thank you again for your efforts in your report today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions, members of the council?
Nice job, Angie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Angie. Great job.
That's it, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. General reports from town council. Are there any general reports?
I got something, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I do.
Who said that?
Bill B.
Oh, it's Bill. Go ahead, Alex.
May I speak?
Alex, go ahead.
Thank you. God is good. I've been praying about making some comments during general reports today, and I had on my mind the trip that we took as a council up to Charleston, mid-part of July. The Municipal Association of South Carolina has a conference, and this particular time, we all attended, with the exception of Councilman Ames, who was out of the country. But it gives us an opportunity to learn. It put on several sessions, and one of the sessions talked about civility. So we've got this on the dais here today, and it says, "I pledge to build a stronger and more prosperous community by advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of my city or town." Now, this came from the Municipal Association, and there's some blocks on here that talks about the pillars of civility. That's great. I had no idea that was going to be on the dais today, but it's very relevant to the comments that I wanted to make. There was also a session on diversity, equity, and inclusion at this very conference. It was standing room only, similar to what we have here, but a much larger crowd. Females, persons of color, persons with disabilities, they were the minority in that crowd. And I'm not quite sure which other council members were there because, again, it was crowded. I know Mr. Orlando was there. I know Councilwoman Becker was there. Now, we all know we had a very disturbing discussion around DEI here on this dais. But I learned a couple things during that session. First and foremost, DEI is not a monster. I'll say that again. DEI is not a monster. To the point where not only are private organizations like Disney and Starbucks hiring directors to lead their staff through this opportunity, but our neighbor / competitor, Myrtle Beach, they were the facilitator of the session, to the point where they have stood up a whole DEI office and hired a whole person to lead the effort. I would encourage us as leaders to not be afraid to duplicate this effort with DEI. I would encourage us, when we have our strategic plan session this year, that our human resource department incorporates diversity, equity, and inclusion into that plan. And just bear with me for one moment, because I know these words sometimes bring forth negative connotation, but equity, okay, here's the analogy that they used. There were 3 kids. One was about 3 feet tall, the other one was about 4 feet tall, and the last one about 6 feet tall. And they were trying to watch a baseball game over a fence. And the fence was 5 feet tall. The only kid that could watch that game was a 6-footer. And when they switched to the next slide, all of the shorter kids now had a box underneath them so that they were tall enough to see the game. God created all of us equal, absolutely. But equity is something totally different. We all can learn from these opportunities. We all can put aside our biases for these opportunities. So I encourage all of us, particularly you, Councilwoman Becker, because you were there with me, I know for sure. that we move forward in this direction. It is important to all of our initiatives. It is important to us as a town that we understand one another intimately and by and by. So I thank whomever decided to put this on the dais today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But let's be bold enough in the other topics also. Thank you.
It will be here next week, too. Bill, do you have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to acknowledge Mark Orlando, Chief Tadlock, Johanna Pfister, and Chris Yates for intervening in a very dangerous situation last weekend where there was installed a temporary fueling station at Skull Creek Marina, and the installation was not up to code. And a very dangerous situation was presented, and they brought their expertise to the scene in a very diligent way with rapid dispatch, and came up with corrective action, and a potential disaster was averted. And I just want to thank them for their professionalism, for pulling together a team over a weekend, and to make sure that everything was done properly. So thank you very much.
Any other general reports? Glenn? Sure.
I'll do the last report when you're ready for me, sir.
Okay, Low Country Area Transportation Study, Mr. Stanford.
Thank you. LATS is the Regional Transportation Authority, and I'm the town's representative to LATS. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they had some announcements I think are of interest to this community. First is the 278 Corridor Improvement Project is on hold, waiting. The end-to-end analysis is being conducted separately by the town by our independent contractor. Then, as a result of the 26 recommendations that were made by Town Council, DOT reported that most of those have been accepted and will be incorporated into the project, including a revised intersection design at Squire Pope and Chamberlain Drive. That's where there will be now 2 turn lanes rather than that U-turn lane that was originally proposed. A revised intersection design for Spanish Wells and Wild Horse Road. Introduction of 11-foot interior through lanes within the Stony community to minimize some of the impact that is going on there. A meandering of the 278 westbound lanes through Jenkins Island to improve the corridor feel as you're going through there. 2 bump-out pedestrian overlooks were proposed for inclusion in the bridge design so that there would be viewing platforms out there on the proposed new bridge structures that would be going in there. And finally, and I think maybe of most current interest to this community, there will be a repaving from Yacht Cove down to Arrow Road. They anticipate letting the contract in September. That road desperately needs to be repaved. That is a state highway. It is not the town's responsibility. We've been putting pressure on DOT about that, so that road that desperately needs to be repaved is going to be done. That's a $5.2 million project. So there are good things going on with our transportation needs, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Low Country Council of Governments, Ms. Becker.
I do not have a report today. We have a meeting next week.
Thank you. So Local, Mr. Lennox.
Thank you, John. The Southern Low Country Regional Board met July 26th with a single agenda item, and that was a review of the final draft of the intergovernmental agreement to form a regional housing trust fund. That was passed and submitted to the 8 participating parties, 2 counties and 6 municipalities. And if I can jump to Finance Committee, the Finance Committee this morning reviewed that draft IGA and recommended advancing it to full town council next month.
Thank you, sir. County Airport, Mr. Ames,
There is no report today, Mayor.
and we go right into public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our committee has met and with unanimous support endorsed the resolution of the town of Hilton Head authorizing the implementation of the Gullah History and Cultural Education Program for the town. And the anecdotal comment was that permeated the discussion was that with further education, we can have a greater understanding and respect for all of our neighbors on the island. And there was a genuine interest in advancing this to town council with the recommendation of its full support. Thank you.
Now, this will go to town council next meeting for a vote, not this meeting, next meeting for a vote.
Thank you.
Okay, public planning, Mr. Ames?
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Planning Committee met August 4th. It approved a resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into contractual arrangements for beach parking management services. It discussed a selection of a third-party vendor for short-term rentals, and it advanced the first priority LMO ordinance amendments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We have now the presentation of the Shockwave Proclamation. Anna, are you there? Where? Anna.
Oh, she's.
Oh, my God, Anna, we got you.
It is Sand Shark Welcome Week. We welcome students this week, so I cannot get off my phone and my computer for 5 seconds. Things are happening. It's all
Like
very
sneakers
exciting.
too, it's okay.
Yeah, got to keep moving.
Got to keep moving. Okay, here a proclamation here. Whereas the University of South Carolina, Beaufort is fully accredited, comprehensive institution within the University of South Carolina system. Whereas USCB provides instructional in 19 undergraduate degree programs and 2 graduate degree programs to fulfill its mission to respond to the regional needs, draw upon regional strengths, and prepare graduates to contribute locally, nationally, and internationally. And whereas USCB is the primary regional resource for exceptional healthcare professionals, teachers, hospitality managers, science-based researchers, computer troubleshooters in South Carolina. And whereas USCB has a reputation for institutional prominence as a regional problem solver, catalyst for progress, and an engine for economic growth. And whereas reports on the economic impact on higher education for Beaufort County indicates that 1,066 jobs, $50.5 million in additional wages and salaries, $101.2 million in economic output, and $1.6 million in net government return. And whereas the University of South Carolina, Beaufort welcomes more than 2,100 students, their parents and other family members, and friends to the campus in Bluffton, Beaufort, and Hilton Head, to the athletic facilities in Hardyville for the start of the 2022-2023 academic season. Therefore, the town of Hilton Head Island, I proclaim August 17th to the 24th, USCB Shark Week, Welcome Week.
Can I just thank you?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. It is such an exciting time at USCB. We welcomed first-year students on Sunday, and we are poised to have at the university the largest class in our history this year. This morning I did an orientation for new faculty members. We had an auditorium full of new faculty members who are excited about what they're going to be teaching, excited about the programs they're creating, excited about students, and excited about the university overall. And we just got, July 14th, accepted to NCAA Division II. We are excited. We're fired up. Lots of seeds that we have been planting for years are bearing fruit right now. And I can't tell you that the static energy that there is at the university. So thank you all so much for supporting us. Thank you for believing in USCB. Thank you for believing in our students. Thank you for believing in our mission, which is to educate people in the southern low country of South Carolina to be great citizens, to contribute to their communities economically, civically, socially, and just to really do everything that we can to make this community, these communities, places that we all want to live and work. So thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We love you. We consider you all sand sharks, and fins up. Thank you.
Chris, your appearance by citizens?
Yes, sir. Our first citizen is Mr. Levon Stevens. Mr. Stevens?
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, and Mr. Mark Orlando, our town manager. I wanted to take a moment to recognize someone who has recently resigned from the staff here at the town. What can we say about Jen McEwen that hasn't already been said? Congratulations, you will be missed. Thanks for all you've done. All that has been said and replayed like an old 45. While we echo these sentiments, like everyone else, we also say she's gone too soon. Was everything realized that she envisioned specifically for the historic neighborhoods? She has been an advocate for our interests and our efforts from day one. Having had the chance to hear some of what she wanted to do to enhance the appeal of our neighborhoods has become nothing more than a deferred dream. In the pursuit of a replacement, let us not find someone that simply goes along to get along, as this would be a complete embarrassment to the leadership Jen brought to this position. At the end of last year, Jen McEwen and the Office of Cultural Affairs proposed an educational program for the community on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That program was met with a lot of oppositions and questions. We are grateful for their efforts in continuing this conversation. It is quite disturbing to hear that Jen and other people in our community experience and threats for opening the subject of diversity, equity, and inclusion. These themes are mentioned as parts of our strategic plan for the town. The strategic plan created by the Office of Cultural Affairs aligns with the town's strategic plan. How do we thank someone for being an ally? Someone who stood by someone who stood by you when it was not politically or professionally expedient to do so. Someone who fearlessly spoke the hard truths when honesty was unpopular and unwelcome. Someone who refused to be silenced or turn away from her friends. Someone who lived her values and helped us clarify our own. Someone who was always willing to speak truth to power regardless of the cost. Jen was all of this. Her advocacy was powerful. She made a difference that will impact our community long after she's gone. The Land and Cultural Preservation Task Force has worked on a program for town officials and staff to educate them on the history of our Gullah Geechee culture. This is a rich and essential part of our history here for all citizens and visitors alike. I encourage the leadership of the town council and members of our community to continue the work of the strategic plan as we strive to create a theme of one island, one community. Respectfully submitted, Levon Stevens, Chair, the Town of Hilton Head Island Land and Cultural Preservation Task Force, and the Hilton Head Native Island Leaders Group. Thank you.
Thank you. Krista,
Martin Lesh. Mr. Lesh?
would you please state your name and address, sir?
Martin Lesh, 10 Mystic Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Orlando, and council members. The OCA was created to serve and grow the arts and cultural assets of the island. I'm concerned that our first director of the Office of Cultural Affairs was run out of town by a town council member. While the arts and cultural groups of Hilton Head are currently concerned about the future of this office, Councilwoman Becker is celebrating at the fact that a town employee left her job and moved to a whole different state because she felt unsafe for her family in our community due to the animosity created by the Councilwoman's irresponsible dissemination of an EDI training video. This is reprehensible, especially since the EDI training is something that you must have to apply for most grants and sponsorships, and not just for the arts, but for any nonprofit. EDI training is required to work on Wall Street. Even Walmart requires EDI. Yet Councilwoman Becker is fighting it for town staff and the community at large, even though she claims to be an educator. This council should be ashamed of the way a town employee and residents were targeted. It is unacceptable. To have them called out by name in an extremist and antagonistic environment by Councilwoman Becker at contentious political rallies and have Councilman Harkins and Stanford support her so openly is a sad moment for this community. Town council spent $1 million after feeling unsafe from one meeting, closed town hall for months, and still limits capacity. What was done to help this employee who was simply doing their job after a council person ignited an extremist fire against them openly and in public? There is a disconnect between the cultural community of this island and some on this council. It's a growing industry that contributes $40 million to the local economy annually, creates jobs, and drives tourism and quality of life beyond measure. What we do will not always fit your agenda, Ms. Becker. I know many of you love the economic impact and community cohesion created by the Lantern Parade and other cultural events, but there is a great deal of organizing and collaboration that goes into creating these events, and the OCA is essential for that. Ms. McEwen strengthened our arts, culture, and historical assets. Her work was highly appreciated and admired by the community she served. I urge you all to hire a suitable replacement for this role in coordination with cultural and arts leaders. Councilwoman Becker, you claim to be a supporter of the local arts community. Although I'm only speaking for myself, I can't think of a single organization that believes this of you. You bill yourself as a strong leader, yet continually are divisive, disruptive, and uncooperative. While the OCA and Gullah Geechee Task Force seek to build a more inclusive, economically dynamic, and enlightened community, you seem to be interested in tearing those efforts apart. Thank you.
Diedrich, advocate.
If I may, Mayor.
Yes.
Typically, I don't respond. However, when there is such a litany of accusations, unwarranted and unfounded, I want to make sure that I say those words, unwarranted and unfounded. I can tell you that with great respect for the arts community and many friends within that community, I have a tremendous amount of support there as well. In addition to that, Ms. McEwen's work here in the island, on the island at the town brought us incredible events. We had an amazing run, and we appreciated everything that she did while she was here with regard to her job. There's EDI and there's EDI. Thank you.
Question next.
Diedrich, advocate.
Mr. Mayor, Town Council, Mr. Town Manager, I want to talk about two things. One is the 278 corridor, and the other one is about resilience. And I want to thank you for your patience in the process of the 278 corridor. And I also want to thank Mark Orlando and Sean Collin for helping the process along. Our citizens group appreciates the adoption of the new Memorandum of Agreement with the county and a new statement of work with regard to the engagement of an independent consultant for the 278 corridor. The reason for bringing in an independent consultant is not to hash over existing plans, but to provide Hilton Head Island with a new, unbiased approach to the corridor project. An end-to-end simulation and beyond, and the possibility of presenting new options, and most importantly, to give us the confidence that the chosen way forward is founded on solid, analytical, and practical principles. Then the other issue is the formation of a technical working group, which will, I believe, will also add to the overall outcome of the corridor project. It should consist of the town, county, and residential participants, and really serve the community in a better way that way. The idea behind the technical working group is to have people in that group that can add, that have a technical value add to the whole process. Currently, there are over 8,800 signatures on the petition, and it is a testament to the interest of our island residents and the ownership they take in protecting the values that Hilton Head Island carries. We also want to thank, of course, Senator Davis, Mark Orlando, and Sean again for their belief in this process. Now, the other topic is resilience, and we haven't really talked about that often enough. I've communicated with Councilman Ames on the importance of the island's resilience to climate change and the resulting increase in sea level, in precipitation and into storm systems. It's something we don't see immediately, but if it happens, we need to be adequately prepared for that. So we've taken the initiative to plan a symposium on resilience in March of 2023, and would look at the town of Hilton Head to be the key sponsor of that event. It is a complex issue that has a technical aspect as well as a funding aspect with local and federal funds coming into play. We would like Hilton Head Island to be the leading light to other barrier islands in South Carolina on this important issue, and look forward to your guidance on this. And in this process, we've also approached Parents Island. Mr. Stephen Woodall, who is in the audience, is a retired US Navy captain who has made the link to Parris Island, and combining a federal element to our Hilton Head, I think will increase our success for overall funding of infrastructure that needs possibly need to be put in place. Thank you.
I suggest you bring this idea up to the new council that gets seated the first week in December.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Krista?
Steve Bear. Mr. Bear.
Thank you, council and staff. Thank you especially for the draft MOU and statement of work that you sent us last Friday. After our past experience with the county on this project, our technical working group, now representing close to 9,000 petition signers, is extremely gun-shy about loopholes and imprecise wording in the statement of work that would once again cause misdirection of the work, as it did in 2020. Avoiding these issues was covered in the original statement of work, very carefully covered, but some has been lost in the town's new version. Hence, we suggest the following additions, and I've sent a list to Ms. Whittemire, additions and changes to the town's statement of work to ensure that the independent review does not lose its focus and produces the data intended, including fair and accurate plan comparisons and exposure of missing and hidden parts, and especially potential new ideas that existing consultant may have missed. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm very impressed with MKSK's work, but they stopped at Spanish Wells Road and dealt mainly with beautification issues and not traffic issues. These words are not new. Most that I've provided here today are a topical grouping of the words that my technical working group colleagues have sent you earlier today, and of critical parts from the original SAO, statement of work, that were left out or understated in the town's new statement of work. So essentially, we've provided an analysis of the gap between the new statement of work and the old statement of work. None of these restatements should be controversial. They were part of the original statement of work circulated by Senator Davis on July 5th, and there's no reason for excluding them. And I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of the important ones. One is parity. The work to be reviewed by the consultant should include, with equal status, the comments filed by citizens, as well as those by the Chamber of Commerce and other people. Representatives of the technical working group should also be included as an equal partner, including all meetings and reviews, as are representatives of the county and other stakeholder groups like the Chamber of Commerce. Section 6 of the original statement of work, entitled Oversight and Transparency, which talks about ex parte conversations and such, must be observed in the new statement of work. Also, a map should be included in the new statement of work, it doesn't have to be this map, but one that clearly illustrates the area under study. Also, some of the cases that were in our group's statement of work have been dropped from the town statement of work, and those should be included. Basically, I think between the two documents, we can have a good agenda for the consultant, but we don't want to miss the parts that got us in trouble in 2020. Thank you.
Mr. Bear, I suggest you send a copy of that to the new county chairman and to the new town manager in December.
The new town manager?
New town manager? Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
I love the way he looked up.
I thought Steve was sitting next to me. It's okay.
You're just testing him. Thank you. I will.
Krista?
Mr. Hoagland, please.
Before the clock starts, can I hand 2 documents, please, to Alex Brown? Do you mind? Before you start the clock?
I could give a shit. Go ahead, give it
Documents are fighting small town corruption, how to obtain accountability, oversight, and transparency by the Columbia Law School, people much smarter than me. And here is a audit of the Palm Beach Chamber CDB audit, which resulted in prison, and that's what we're going to get here. My name is Skip Hoagland. Windmill Harbor, you're in violation of FOIA. How much more corruption can taxpayers stand from this council? It's so bad, it's become an embarrassment. This entire council just keeps voting and rubber stamping tax money to be illegally and even criminally issued and misused by not just our nonprofit chamber, but others. This is not funny money or monopoly. Lawyer Gruber just found guilty of 3 ethics violations, and he's still employed. Mr. McCann uses tax money to fly first class to Italy with Steve Riley. Mr. Orlando caught lying and illegally using tax funds and town employees in Bluffton with Lisa Salka and lawyer Finger. Lawyer Stanford, past president of the secret Greater Underground Island Council, and he will not tell us who put him in that position. Harkins, Lennox, McCann, all committed fraud and lied, saying they saw the illegal chamber tax accounting. Lawyers Coltrane and Gruber committed fraud and schemed the illegal tax-funded chamber contract with no accounting provisions, with Lennox and Ames drafted by the Bluffton lawyer Terry Finger. Yes, all taxpayers got the middle finger. Ms. Becker voted for chamber tax theft. I want to know why you did that. Mr. Brown, I'm not going to make a comment about you. CPA John Troyer, Orlando, have hired a town audit they call a positive external audit report done by Green Finney firm. This audit is a fraud, and it's not an audit that taxpayers can trust. I called Green Finney and asked them, do they agree with me that this was just an audit of numbers that John Troyer, CPA, handed them and would not catch crimes committed by town insiders? They agreed. Only an external, independent forensic audit could assure taxpayers no insider corruption, cheating, waste, embezzlement, fraud, kickbacks, payoffs, etc. An audit done under GAS, General Accepted Auditing Standards, will not catch crimes to taxpayers. We must demand that John Troyer, Orlando, Lennox agreed to undergo a forensic audit, clean the slate. If not, they must have a lot to hide. How do we trust a hired audit when all officials who control millions of our tax funds have been caught committing corruption? It's time to clean this house. Mr. Lennox, as a past banker, will you agree to a forensic audit today, right now? If not, why not? Respond to everybody in this room. That's what I thought. Lennox, you, McCann, and Harkins will leave this council soon disgraced. A man is only as good as the good he leaves behind, and he's supposed to leave things better than he found them. This council has failed us all. It's despicable, and it's violated your campaign promises. Now to add, vote for Joanne Orszak for new mayor. Alan Perry is an insider, as is Kim Likens is an insider, and Steve Arnold is an insider, and they've already been caught at a legal tax use and broke the law. Now, anybody that calls me crooked or says that I'm lying and that I'm not 100% correct, I will file a lawsuit against them for defamation. So if I'm not correct, stand up. Anybody in this room, stand up and prove me wrong. Thank you.
The only thing I tell you is you need new material. The material is getting stale. Yes, I did.
Whoa, 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 whoa!
Krista?
How can you do that?
Krista, next
He's a
name?
citizen of Hilton Head Island, and he's asking you
Krista.
very important information. And you guys are ignoring it wrong.
Next name, Krista?
Miss Greeley, Lynn Greeley.
This is so wrong, so wrong. You need to address it.
I agree. Hi, I'm Lynn Greeley. I live at 8 Wax Myrtle. I have been following Skip Hoagland's exposure of this corruption done by this council and other councils, and I have watched this council award and recognize many people. Today, we want to thank Skip Hoagland and all who work for him at scwatchdog.com. Since Skip Hoagland is here today, I would like to present Skip with this award on behalf of many in this community that fully support and respect Skip's efforts and dedication. So please don't be laughing at Skip anymore, because you're laughing at the whole community when you do that. Amen. We believe he is a hero and an American treasure. We love Skip. Thank you so much for all you do. This is the Watchdog Citizen of the Year Award. And we actually gave one at the Lupton, and we're also going to give one here, because Skip deserves it. This is a gorgeous award that Jack back there is the artist of it. I'll show you the award, okay, that Skip is getting, and I'd like to read it. It says, identifying corruption in the Palmetto State, First Amendment, freedom of speech, which is not really allowed here most of the time. I came here new. I've only been here a year and a half. And the few times I've been here, it has been unbelievably rude by this council. And so I just, the way you treat people, especially people new, the Southern hospitality, it's nothing. There's no, I better go back to California. I thought that was a blue state, but they are nicer to us there than they are here, I'll tell you that. Then, this is the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, and scwatchdog.com, forbidden news. And I want to read this. One man of passion can accomplish more than 1 million with just a passing interest. There are 3 classes of people: those who see when they are shown, those who do not see. That's by Leonardo da Vinci, 1484. Wow. People need dramatic examples to shake them out of their apathy and their dishonesty. Thank you so much.
Any other citizens, Krista?
No, sir, that concludes appearance by citizens. Thank you.
Okay, unfinished business, second reading, proposed ordinance 20-22-08, amending section 12-1-110 and section 12-1-515 of the municipal code of the town of South Carolina regarding e-bike regulations. Have a motion?
Move adoption of this proposed ordinance relating to e-bikes.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion by members of the council? Hey, yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm just going to continue to say what I've said through committee and to each of you. The idea that the e-bikes are allowed on the pathways is being governed, as we're being told, by the South Carolina state law, that they in fact are saying that e-bikes are not motorized vehicles and therefore are allowed on our pathways. Now, while I understand that, and we're looking for ways to provide some safety and to control some of the overcrowded aspects of our pathways with e-bikes, regular bikes, carts, segways, one-wheelers, and you name it. The issue that I have with this ordinance is that it only segments out one portion of the e-bike population of users. It focuses solely on the businesses that are renting e-bikes and requiring them to put on regulators to control their speeds. That does nothing to do with providing safety on our pathways with regard to the e-bikes. When you think about that, you've done two things. You've left out those folks who own their own e-bikes here on the island, and those folks who bring their e-bikes onto the island to use on our pathways, and nothing regulates those e-bikes. So there's that. And then there's the second part that is really needs to be considered because of that. We have now limited our commerce, our businesses on the island from fully being able to use their products. And to me, if you're going to make a regulation, and I am not the world's biggest regulator, to be honest with you, I think folks may know that about me. But if we're going to have a regulation, then it sure needs to apply A, to everybody, and it needs to be productive in terms of its goal. If you have a problem and you want to have a solution, then you have to attend to the details. And within the details are the devil. And in this one, I've just stated clearly why I cannot support this, and I don't know why anyone up here can. So passing this regulation on to the second reading and here tonight will do nothing more than hamstring our businesses and provide none of the safety it says that it's intended to do. Thank you.
Comments by members of the community? Anybody in the community like to make a comment on this? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please give us your name and address.
I'm Steve Muller, 10 South Forest Beach, and I'm a little late to this discussion because I read it in the paper, but I'm on the bike paths every day of my life for the past 3.5 years. And when I read about electric bikes, can go up to almost 30 miles an hour, and I see daily the families right across the street from the beach who sometimes don't know which way the beach is. There's lots of confusion in the children and the elderly people. And if you count how many curves there are on North Forest Beach and South Forest, it's wholly dangerous as it is. And I wrote to a council member to try to understand what the reason was why you would support such a thing. I never got an answer back. So I was trying to find out tonight why y'all would do such a crazy sort of thing, particularly in that aspect. So it seems to me that it's just not nuanced. When you're talking about publicly owned bike paths, my understanding is they're not going to be allowed in the gated communities. So the beach is great. You got about 5 or 6 miles of pathways. But when you're talking about Pope and North and South Forest Beach, where the preponderance are tourists and families and curves, and if you try to talk about education, people who are in here for the weekend or the week, I mean, it's just, to me, I don't have your insight into why you would support it. I see every day tragic things that happen and potential, and I see baby carriages and young people on bicycles, and now I'm seeing these e-bikes with these big tires, and you know they're going to continue to evolve. And all I can picture is coming around the curve and seeing 6 of them barreling down, coming around the corner. It's just kind of scary to me. But like I said, I'm sure you have a lot more wisdom about this than me. I just see the potential danger, and I'm scared for the people and the visitors that are down there.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
One quick short comment. I can fall down on my bike all by myself. I don't need help. But I'd like to suggest putting a speed limit on a walking path. Just can't go faster. I don't care if you're on a bike, maybe 20 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, but certainly the e-bikes that come up on the path and go along at 20 or 30 miles an hour on these windy roads, windy walk paths, you don't even see them coming. I mean, it's even a challenge on a bike to watch out for walkers. Dare I say that it's a walking path to begin with. Just an idea.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mayor, Council,
My name is Jim Stevenson, and live on the island. My wife and I have e-bikes. I broke my back 2 years ago, and I'm one of those guys that have the fat tires on the e-bike. And we love to take our bikes out, and I just fought cancer here recently, so I'm going to get back on the bike here soon. But I'm not one of these believers in laws and restrictions and all these things coming in, because who's going to enforce it? Are we going to hire more sheriff deputies to be out there to arrest people? Now, my wife and I were run off almost on a path by a bunch of kids on their regular bikes. I mean, they weren't even on e-bikes, and they ran us off, and it wasn't fun. But you know what? Stuff happens. It's kind of like trying to regulate crimes with guns by adding more laws. You're not going to do that. You have to expect people to be responsible, caring people that are out there. And you know what? You're going to run into people that aren't. And things are going to happen. And what are you going to do when you put all the e-bikes onto the road? Now you got cars with the e-bikes and issues with that. You know, oh, we need more laws and more this and more that. And I'm just, we need to be careful how many laws we're going to throw out there in a community. And then, because you got the enforcement issue, how are you going to do that? You're going to put a cop on every corner, and so that's all I have to say about that. Y'all need to think about all of this and how you're going to enforce it. Laws aren't going to solve your problem.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and Mr. Orlando. I'm Brad Johnson. I live on Heath Court West in Leamington. I want to talk a little bit about this e-bike ordinance. The way I read it, it simply requires the businesses, the rental companies, to put a sticker on a bike and hand out a pamphlet that asks for etiquette on the roads. I asked you guys, you all, last time you drove down 278, how many bikes, just pedal bikes, did you see stop at each intersection where the octagonal sign is? If you got a handful in a week, you'd be lucky. That just doesn't happen anymore. Thinking back to one of the science classes we all probably had back in high school or something, force equals mass times acceleration. The mass of these bikes, adding the weight of the people at the speed they're going, increases proportionately for the force on an impact. And without providing some limit to one of those three factors, force, mass, or acceleration, all we're doing is asking for injuries that are going to happen. They will happen. It's just a given fact. Enforcement, as the other gentleman mentioned, is basically non-existent. I mean, it's a statistical improbability that an enforcement officer is at an intersection at the time somebody goes through an intersection and doesn't stop on a bicycle, let alone walking. The walkers are better and joggers are better than the bicyclists. So I'm asking you all to reconsider this ordinance as it's currently written, to take into account some measure of increasing the safety, because that's what this is all about, without impinging on the amenities for visitors, without causing undue necessary activity on the part of the businesses. Some of the businesses went out and bought bikes 2 years ago, e-bikes. They made a decision, what kind of bike, what capabilities. When it comes to issues like this, they, in essence, guessed wrong. And they're asking you to kind of cover them for a while. My suggestion is to phase in some reasonable approach. And I sent you all an email earlier this morning about it. I don't need to elaborate on that anymore. The other thing, which is probably the most important in my opinion, is the word beach was never mentioned in the ordinance. The last time I was on a beach here 2 weeks ago, high tide, everybody squeezed up, 2 sets of 2 e-bikers came rolling through at more than 12 miles an hour. They had to veer through one of those canopies that people sit under with half a dozen people in order to miss some kids that were sitting on the beach. Following, another set of people came through, and they looked like a snake going through the people sitting on the beach. I ask you to think about the future, solve the problem now, so that we don't have an incident where some young kid gets hurt on the beach. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the audience on e-bikes? Back up to the council, discussion?
Yes,
Glenn.
Mr. Mayor, I want to emphasize to people, first of all, the great work that the town has gone through in committee. Hours of presentations about e-bikes and what to do about e-bikes. We had a draft of an ordinance that was going to limit them. And what we find is that we are preempted by state law. State law says e-bikes or bicycles. We're not going to ban bicycles on our pathways in this town, so we can't ban e-bikes. I wish we could. I disagree with the state law, but that's the trap that we find ourselves in. That is the reason that this ordinance has been drafted, and that's the reason behind the whole idea. Thank you.
Tammy?
Well, first of all, thank you for the comments from the citizens here in the chambers. I appreciate them. I think that this ordinance needs more work, but perhaps, as Glenn correctly pointed out, the work needs to be directed at the state level. Perhaps there's some influence that we can have there with regard to how that law is written, so that we can then come back and actually provide a real solution to a safety issue, acknowledged safety issue on the island, and do something that's meaningful. Thank you.
David? Tom?
I agree with Glenn. There was a lot of work that went into researching the options available to the town in trying to get its hands around the e-bike situation before it got too far out of control. The first hurdle that was insurmountable was the state law saying that an e-bike is a bike. Anywhere bikes go, so go e-bikes. We talked a lot about trying to regulate speed, and that was sternly resisted by manufacturers and renters of e-bikes. To do anything to the bike itself to prohibit speeds beyond 12 miles an hour would in essence invalidate the warranty. So this ordinance, I think, represents a logical and viable first step, and I assure you, if it doesn't work, there'll be a step two.
Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll go back to communication is the key. I would encourage our citizens to stay involved on this particular topic. Rest assured that tonight's vote is not the end all when it comes to safety on our pathways. Our town manager has been diligent about taking notes. His staff has done the same. We've had lots of discussions at committee level about what we can do differently on our pathways to make them safer, much of which will be capital expenses on our part. So more to come on this topic. Tonight is just simply aligning ourselves with state code. Thank you, sir.
Bill?
Yeah, I have nothing more to add, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Krista, call the vote.
Mr. Brown?
Support.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker? No. Mr. Lennox?
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mayor McCann?
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Thank you. On new business, Marcy, could you give us a little background here?
Good afternoon. For the record, Marcy Benson, Senior Grants Administrator. Before you today is a recommendation from the Finance and Administrative Committee requesting approval to submit the amended 5-year consolidated plan for participation in HUD's Community Development Block Grant Program. In 2021, HUD accepted the town's 5-year consolidated plan, which included program year 2020 CDBG funds, as well as the first and third round of CDBG COVID funds, also known as CDBG CV funds. On May 13th of this year, HUD issued a announcement of a reallocation to the town of CDBG CV funds in the amount of approximately $102,000. These funds became available when other CDBG grantees did not apply for or they declined their awards. So the reallocated funds were made available to grantees that demonstrated a capacity to quickly expend the CDBG CV funds. And the grantees, eligible for the reallocated funds were limited to those that expended 99% or more of their CDBG CV funds by January 4th of this year. This reallocation is in addition to the first and third rounds of CDBG CV funds, and it brings the cumulative amount of all of the CDBG CV funds to approximately $634,000. The program year 2020 funds, the regular CDBG funds, that amount did not change. The allocation was still the same. And by conducting this amended plan, we will then submit to HUD the revised plan for their review, and if they accept it, the town will be eligible for this additional CDBG funding, and we are proposing to use it for the same activities that were in the original 2020 CDBG plan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Marcy? Any questions from members of the community to Marcy? Okay, with that, if there's no more discussion by council, Krista, will you call the roll?
We didn't make the motion, Mr. Mayor.
We need a motion.
Yes, we do.
I told you that.
I'm watching you. I got you.
Go ahead. Need a motion.
Okay, sure. We move to accept Marcy's resolution of approving the 5-year consolidated amendment as required by the U.S. Department of Housing, Urban Development, HUD, to participate in the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program. Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion by members of the council? Krista, the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown?
Support.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker? Yes. Mr. Lennox?
Before I vote, Mayor, I'd like the public to know this was fully vetted in detail at the Finance and Administrative Committee before it came to council.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mayor McCann?
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.
Mr. Orlando, the town manager, do we need an executive session, sir?
No.
One more.
What? Shit.
12B.
12B. Consideration of resolution of Town of Hilton Head Island authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding between the Beaufort County outlining the critical path of the William Hilton Parkway Gateway Corridor project, including an independent end-to-end analysis of the corridor. Sean, you give us some words of wisdom?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Town Manager. Well, first I want to say thank you for your collective leadership. As outlined by Councilman Stanford at the LATS Committee, you're making a difference. You're moving the project in the right direction. Modified signals, additional considerations that the county and the state have included now in revised modified preferred alternatives. And so we continue on with our 26 recommendations and additional work that needs to be done to advance the project. I was before you last month. 4 weeks go by pretty quickly. But we've done an awful lot of work in the background to bring this before you tonight. And so I'll cover it. I'll cover some additional comments that have come in from citizens as well. I'm going to be as brief as I can, but meet all of the points of what I want to communicate with you tonight. One, the recommendation, what I'm asking for of town council. I'll go through the MOU, the provisions that are outlined within it, and then next steps to advance this if supported by council tonight. So briefly, the recommendation, right? Consider a resolution of the town of Hilton Island executing an MOU with Beaufort County outlining the critical path of the William Hilton Parkway Gateway Corridor project, including two key components: independent end-to-end analysis and simulation, as well as the adaptive traffic signal component that's baked into here. I'll go through the provisions. There's 8 provisions that are included in the MOU. The first one establishes that the town and the county are equal partners in this project going forward. And I've sent this MOU to Jared Fralix, the project manager at the county, so he's aware of it. But number one provision, we're equal partners to advance this project in a partnership. Number 2, the town and county mutually work together on the feasibility of the 26 recommendations that were supported by council and that we've had discussion in a couple of settings with members of county council earlier this year. Number 3, that the town retain an independent consultant, one that does not have previous or current relationships with SCDOT, to do the independent review. They'll do the end-to-end simulation analysis, and it will extend beyond the project limits that were set in the NEPA document, which were evaluated during even our work with MKSK and HDR earlier this year. And it's outlined in the scope, and I'll talk about the extent of that project just in a minute, but it will go beyond the current limits that that SCDOT and the county had identified. We also need to make sure that we consider the project impacts and a true mitigation assessment, opportunities to mitigate the impacts that we don't have a clear definition on right now. So I think that deeper dive will help us with mitigation. Number 4 is really a demand of the county that we have access to all the data that's been accumulated with SCDOT, KCI, the consultants, so that we can accurately move through with this independent review and analysis to make sure that we are evaluating everything that we can from a data and technical standpoint. And we also need base design files so that we're all on the same page for what we're looking at. Moving on to number 5. The number 5 is about the adaptive traffic signal technology. As you know, this money has been money budgeted in this year's CIP to address all signals on Hilton Island. There's been a request to synchronize our project with Beaufort County, and we're actively trying to get there. I will tell you that we will have the adaptive traffic signal RFP out for the town with an option with the county to do that synchronization. And the goal is to have it out by September 1, okay? So we are moving forward, and we hope the county can sync up and we can do this together. But I think we need to move forward regardless. We already have contracted with MKSK to do an engineering opinion of probable cost for all of the recommendations that were included by council, the 26 recommendations. And so that will be going in a parallel effort along with the independent review if supported by council. The town and county will coordinate with SCDOT. As part of the NEPA process, they have to do a value engineering exercise. And, the idea there is to eliminate any unwanted costs, improve function and quality, and to make sure you're getting a long-term, the best return on a long-term investment, getting the best value for lowest cost. And then number 8, anything that has been presented so far, the 26 recommendations, as well as additional recommendations that would result from learning from the adaptive traffic signal technology or that is recommended from the independent review, that the town and the county look at ways to help fund where there might be gaps in the project. That outlines the 8 provisions that are part of the MOU. I do want to address some citizen comments that we received earlier today. And I know that some of them were covered earlier by citizens during their comments. There was some concern expressed about making sure that comments filed with SCDOT would be part of the review process. Well, that's absolutely true. We will make sure that that the consultant that's brought on board will have that information available and consider. Formation of a technical working group. That's a council decision. I have a technical working group that includes Brad Strader with MKSK. I've got other qualified technical people that I can lean on, town staff, and also this independent contractor would be a leader in the field based on the qualifications that we will outline in the RFP. Number 3, consultant modeling expertise and experience should be fully described and evaluated in the consultant's RFP process and not within the scope of work. In the scope of work, we have to make sure that we define what modeling needs to occur, our expectations for the modeling, but absolutely, the expertise in modeling would come out in a qualification for a preferred firm as we move through the vetting process. So yes, that's built in. The specific scope of work, end-to-end study should explicitly state from Moss Creek to Wilborn Road. Other intersections should also be added in this part, and a map should be included. I want to point out at this point the limits that we're looking at. We've expanded the Cross Island, Palmetto Bay Road evaluation all the way to Sea Pine Circle. So it will include Point Comfort Arrow Road intersection, Target, signalized intersection, as well as Sea Pine Circle. And then on the business route, we've gone past Wilborn Road, we've gone to Hooping Crane Way and Indigo Run Drive. We think that those termini make the most sense and give us a deeper understanding that would impact the corridor and the recommendation for throughput simulation. So we've expanded it significantly beyond what has been evaluated already, what we evaluated with MKSK and HDR, and what the citizens had requested in the previous draft of the MOU. So I just want to make sure that that is included already specifically. And certainly, we will provide a map that depicts the extent of the project limits, including all signalized and unsignalized intersections through those sections. 2 more. The specific cases that as a minimum should be evaluated should be stated as they were in the original scope of work or in other clear words. And the consultant should be encouraged to come up with their own cases and ideas. We evaluated, there were 7 items listed in a previous draft scope of work. Again, with Brad Strader's expertise and through calls with 5 highly qualified potential engineering consultants, we grouped a few of those together. They're all included. The intent is being met, but we can certainly refine a little bit on those base cases. But I believe our current scope of work captures what was included. The specific measurement results should be stated, such as traffic delay costs and not included costs and issues, and they're not currently defined clear enough in the scope of work. We will, as part of the evaluation and selection criteria, have those items clearly defined and to meet the expectations so that when consultants respond to the RFP, that they are providing us their input and expertise on that. I will say that this is an RFQ. We're going to qualify a high caliber firm. Would like to have the benefit of them to help us refine the final scope. And that's why I'm saying materially as included the scope along with this MOU to make sure that we are 95% of the way there and let the experts that we contract with get us the other 5%. So I think the citizen comments are baked in. The only one I can address is formation of a technical working group. I think that's a discussion I defer to town council. Next steps and schedule, if approved by town council, that we will request Beaufort County approval of the MOU. I've sent this packet, I sent it late last week to the county, and we'll follow up with correspondence depending on action tonight. Step 2 is to procure a qualified consultant to do the end-to-end work, again outlined in the scope that was attached in the packet, to do the end-to-end simulation and analysis. Items 2 and 3, same kind of thing. It would be an RFQ, qualifying the team, and then finalize the scope of work and getting it out. Third main bullet is to finalize the engineering opinion and probable cost. Again, that's with MKSK and their transportation sub-consultants as well, to give us an idea of what the recommendations that council made, what the true cost is or estimated cost is, to see where there is additional cost or cost savings that can be part of additional discussions with council. We also contract with MKSK to add some additional graphics to do a digital model of the corridor. Again, I've talked about experience as you move through the corridor is going to be very important for everyone to understand. This is a 6 to 9 month process. We're likely to have some new council seated, and I want to make sure that we can clearly convey the project and translates from what I'm talking about today to where we get in somewhere 6 to 9 months down the road. And then fly through videos, again, showing potential alternatives from the current modified preferred alternative to the preferred from a town council and town of Hilton Head standpoint. And then, again, I mentioned finalize this RFP to have a consultant to come on and do the adaptive traffic signal technology upgrade for our signals. And if it all aligns, to have the county ride along with us to make sure that we are doing it in synchronizing the projects, and also have agreed to the maintenance and ongoing operations component, which is just as important as the initial capital investment and upgrade. And so those are the next steps that we have to move through with council approval here. And so I'm back to the recommendation. I won't repeat it, but this is what I'm asking, council consideration for this resolution for the MOU, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
We have a motion on the recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that the council resolve to authorize the town manager to execute the memorandum of understanding, also known as an intergovernmental agreement, regarding these matters, subject to approval by Beaufort County simultaneously.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Bill. Okay, discussion by members of the council.
I got one question.
Oh, sure.
Sean, does the MOU as drafted offer up the town's municipal consent of the project?
No, sir, there's nothing in any of the documents that talk about municipal consent.
Thank you.
No, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question.
Yeah, I want to go to you until I come back to us, okay?
Fine.
Question by members of the community? Mr. Hogan, only on this subject.
I've lived here for 47 years. Like many, we chose Hilton Head for the clean environment and the Charles Fraser vision of a low-density, high-end retirement and tourism destination, not the Myrtle Beach or Charleston big city life. Yet nonstop overdevelopment traffic never ends. Selfishness and greed always finds an excuse to justify profit over people and the environment. And what we don't need is more traffic on a single road, one bridge, all the way to I-95. This new $300 million bridge will mimic what a stent does for your heart, yet will do nothing but increase traffic island-wide, along with more runoff pollution that's already choking our creeks, our rivers, our estuaries, and polluting oysters in just 30 years that took millions of years to create. The powers that be never had the horse sense to develop a proper Hilton Head master land plan that would have stopped all this 40 years ago, including Bluffton, Beaufort, and Hardyville. This would have made living here even more exclusive, and islands simply can't open the floodgates to all without a controlled and forced master land plan. I repeat, we are headed for 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, and as far as I'm concerned, we're already at 6 pounds. I blame the kick the can down the road politicians, elected officials who haven't a clue how to balance responsible growth with maintaining the natural environment that drew them here. And now they have phobed off their responsibility to remediate the damage on the folks at South Carolina PRT and blame others. The traffic and overdevelopment has already caused some longtime residents, businesses, and tourists to leave, and it's seriously impacted the Gullah community. We all keep electing part-time mayors who are builders, developers, real estate agents, lawyers, and competent big spender retired executives who have mastered the revolving door leadership positions that stroke their egos while doing as much harm as possible to once was a majestic landscape. These same elected officials are aided and abetted by unscrupulous, dishonest lawyers who rather line their pockets by overcharging tax-paid legal fees. Google Hilton had overcharged legal fees. And these town attorneys have the same horses in the development races as the elected officials, creating huge conflicts with their real estate development clients. These unethical lawyers include Finger, Coltrane, Alford, and serial ethics violation Josh Gruber. We also have dishonest, compromised town managers and CPAs who avoid forensic audits that would confirm their illegal tax use we identified. It's legalized highway robbery. Now, with the mass exodus of many from big cities to our area, it will only get worse, and we can be assured of 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag if a master land plan is not forced now on these elected officials to stop this insanity. And again, I say vote Ms. Orshak for mayor, not Alan Perry insider and the others. If people can't be dishonest, we're not going to put them up there on that dais.
Steve, yeah.
I just have a quick question for Mr. Sean. I always get your name mixed up. Does the statement of work that you are executing allow provision for calculations of a second bridge instead of expanding the present bridges so as to divert traffic out of Stony and down to the tourist south end directly without affecting Stony? Is that one of the cases you'll study? Another case that you will study is another case that you'll study, the use of bypasses and overpasses so that all that traffic is not routed through 3 traffic lights that are part of the present plan.
Thank you, sir. And last meeting, my name was Colin, I think, and it's Sean Colin. We got it now. Well, the answer to the question is, I believe, yes, okay? The independent consultant will look at all alternatives that have been part of the process so far. We included language in there that they could identify other alternatives that weren't already evaluated. As you recall, as we narrowed down our list to the 26 recommendations, we did look at bypass and elevated structures through Stony. And so absolutely, that's part of the body of work that will be looked at. A second bridge, we did talk with all 5 of the folks that we met with. I promise you that we brought Brad Strader here. He and I spent 2.5 days together. We quickly, and he's highly respected because we got phone calls with all of these firms quickly, within a day notice, and talk with them about alternative ways to get to the island, other application. The whole litany of things that have been discussed, whether it's mass transit, whether it's other technology advancements. We also looked at the study that was provided by the Coastal Conservation League that was done by Smart Mobility to look at some other perspectives. So the answer is absolutely yes. It will look at all alternatives that have been part of the universe so far and provide flexibility for them to identify new alternatives that were not evaluated so far. So yes.
Any other questions by members of the community?
I have one.
Sure.
And I apologize because so I don't know how all of this is all working together and everything, but I live up in near the Spanish Wells area, up where the Cross Island Parkway and the toll booths were removed. And it's a real hassle trying to merge in there at times. It's kind of dangerous at times. And I just wonder how long we have to deal with that. Is there money available to finish the task? Is it SCDOT funds that's doing it, or is it also part of Hilton Head? So, thank you.
Yes, sir. I'll ask you to talk to Mr. Sean over there because he can fill you in with those details. One, yes, it is a Department of Transportation project. We have been working with them along the way. It is their project. It is their project scope. It is their budget. There's a lot of details that go into it, right? And so it is, since it's a state road, we're simply a party to it, but they are definitely the ones with the funding, and they're definitely the ones controlling that project. You asked some very good questions in terms of danger. I feel the same way. I drive that way in the morning. We're working with them on it, but there is a final plan that will be in place. They're not there yet, right? They're repaving right now, but Sean can provide that. I think looking at an illustration and comparing some notes with him will answer your very good questions, sir.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just asked him, he said there was not a master plan. Have you ever done a master plan with Bluffton and Hilton Head Island?
Yeah.
You're talking about spending millions and probably billions of our tax dollars, and you have never done a master plan. I can't understand that. And also with Bluffton, who is our neighbor.
You want me to answer this right now in terms of a master?
Yeah, I would like an answer. I didn't get an answer the last time I was here. I'd like an answer today.
We'll come back to you on that. Thank you.
Okay.
If you want me to answer, again, I don't understand the point of reference on a master plan. We can talk in strategic plan.
You're good. Hey, bring it back to the council. Discussion by members of the council.
I just want to have clarification for people's understanding. When we're talking about adaptive traffic signals, they're also referred to as intelligent signals. These are the types of signals that are computer controlled that will manage the flow of traffic and greatly improve the flow of traffic. And we're going to do these type of adaptive signals throughout the island and hopefully onto the mainland through Bluffton. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. They provide real-time modification to the signal timing and management of not just one signal, but the whole system beyond sort of a static signal timing that needs to be manually adjusted. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to have that clarification for the
Yes, sir.
public. Thank you.
And Glenn, you've tested them out in Mount Point.
I tested
The same
them,
as
man.
walking myself out.
If
right?
you go to Mount Pleasant on a busy day, I was there on a busy Saturday, you come across the Ravenel Bridge, and you have a path of 6 to 8 miles where there's a traffic signal at just about every mile. I had to stop once because those signals manage that traffic going through there beautifully. So that's not a scientific study, but that certainly impressed me about how those signals work. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And adaptive traffic signals are part of intelligent transportation systems. Part of the scope is also to have the consultant identify other ITS opportunities that may exist in the greater area. But yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sean. I think this is greatly approved from previous times when this has been discussed and brought before us. And I want to thank you for that, and town manager and the council for listening carefully to a lot of ideas. And I want to thank Steve Bear and his group for all the hard work that they did. They brought together many different diverging viewpoints. They sat and they looked over the details and thought creatively and intelligently and technically, and gathered together close to 9,000 signatures on a petition of people who have confidence in the work that they've done. And I think that what we have here is a good representation of those thoughts. And thank you all for doing that work. Two things. One is to answer the question about a master plan in the way that I can. And I'll give you what I can say. What I can say is that one of my concerns with regard to the bridge has to do with opening up more space for more cars to come on to a limited capacity island that, as we probably all can at least anecdotally say, is, if not at capacity, maybe past capacity, but we sure are somewhere around it. And so there are the concerns, and that's understood. And because we are now going to have to look at how we arrange our island and deal with the numbers of people and cars that have come onto the island, a master plan is really important. And it hasn't been done, as I understand it. I wasn't here, but we have a town manager who is committed to looking at this island. And I've spoken to him many times about many aspects of various areas along the corridor and throughout the island. And I can tell you that I have every confidence in his determination to making the very best island that we can have and constructing districts that make sense. That does not mean that I support any additional capacity, stretch of our capacity. And so I'm hoping that through this independent study and this work that we're taking on now, perhaps we can find some mechanisms and maybe some new ideas that will create a better Hilton Head in the future than what previously we would have been confronted with. I also am going to ask my council members, and I think I forwarded you an email earlier. I think it's very important that we have representation from the group that has worked so hard and talked to so many people about this project, but we need that technical working group to include those citizen volunteers on it. I believe in previous conversations that we've had together, a number of us have also agreed to that privately. So I'm asking at this point, I think Sean mentioned that would have to come from the council. And I'm asking us all to agree here as part of this MOU resolution that we include the Steve Bear Technical Group as part of this working group moving forward. Almost 9,000 people, in addition to myself, are asking for that. Thank you.
Let me do the three things, okay? First of all, Mark, could you talk about master plan and what you're doing now regionally with like the North End Park, how you're incorporating all the land around there from the airport up to Port Royal Park as part of an overall master plan rather than attempting one thing at a time. And second of all, I would refer back to Public Planning Committee for a discussion there of whether we want to do a working group as we're doing this, because I want to discuss the benefits, the pros and cons of having outside people, besides for the consultants that we have, get involved in this project. Mark?
Yes, sir. And members of council, just to clarify, I apologize, I was a little confused for a second, wondering if you were talking about a master plan as Sean was talking about the corridor and the adaptive signals. I typically respond, just so we all know, I respond at the mayor's request to speak at a council meeting, so I was being very polite and respectful of the process. So yes, Mayor McCann, I can speak about that. You know, one, to answer the question, do I have experience in master planning? Yes, I do. In Bluffton, I put together what they have as a growth framework map, and it really started driving the future for rezonings and infrastructure investment, where you somewhat divine your center of town and your edge of town, protecting your edge and environmental areas. Much different situation here. So to answer that question, yes, ma'am, I do have that experience. One thing that is baked into our strategic plan as we meet on September 8th, we'll dive a little deeper. But in the strategic plan, we have a couple of different elements, a couple different strategies on a real challenge of the status quo for zoning and development standards and growth on our island, right? And so from a layered approach, we have started by understanding and learning about the Mid-Island District as we know it, as far as the water is deep and is all the way down to Matthews, right? So it includes Mitchellville and Bagall and Grassland, but it also includes Northridge Plaza, Port Royal Plaza, and pieces in between. I think that's our first big step to truly understand a district, a series of neighborhoods. But bigger than that, We will start diving into, as an aside, Sean is putting a great team in place. He just hired and promoted Missy Lewick to run the community planning arm. She's got a lot of great experience in the long-range community planning. We've aligned ourselves with some smart folks, internal as well as external. The big first step we'll take, in addition to really attaching it to even Sean's assessment of the corridor here, is to take a look at the island from a growth framework perspective. Right? Most of the island is behind the gates, i.e. it's already been master planned. There's not much to say about that. It's in a contract, it's in a planned unit development, it is what it is for the most part. Outside the gates, there's lots to do, but not a lot to do at the same time, right? There's 23 or so different zoning districts on our zoning map. In fact, 5, 6, 7 shades of yellow. Sean knows it drives me crazy. 4 units, 8 units, somewhere in between. So let's dive into a real growth framework on our island. Let's define those centers and edges. Let's challenge the status quo and put a growth framework map in place, a future land use map in place, and then align your zoning and development standards with it. Calibrate your land management ordinance. It's not just that easy to change purple, which is resort district, to non-purple, non-resort district, because there are taking legislation, there's case law, there's risk, and there's the right thing to do. But yeah, it's time, and I've been talking with town council, and if you have been paying attention along the way, it is in our strategic plan. I'd be happy to share that with you. An island master plan is very much a part of that layer, right? We know great places, great parks, great streets, and great places are planned. And I encourage us and thank you for continuing that. We've been at it for a while. Our very first big step to learn here as we challenge that status quo is the Mid-Island District, right? We're not just planning a park up on the north end that used to be a golf course. We've selected a district and are using the park as that public investment, the anchor, the public anchor, as we think about the future of our island. And it doesn't mean more is better, but it could be less in certain areas and more in certain areas to allow a zoning and development standards framework that is what we intend through a master plan. So.
I just want to say thank you for that explanation. I think everyone, the educational part of this for all of us is so critical as we understand what the government here in Hilton Head is doing and been thinking about and is planning for the future. It's been particular interest of me. It's where I spend an awful lot of my time talking with our town manager and our mayor and other council members. I represent, yes, behind the gates, but I also represent a number of communities outside the gates. And it's time that those who live outside the gates get the same sort of attention and have the same sort of island quality of life, environmental protection that everyone else does. So thank you, Mark.
Yes.
I have a question, Mark. What is your
Can we just
definition
come up with
of
days,
a-
please?
What is your definition of a master plan? How many years out are we talking that that's going to be for? And have you included Bluffton in that master plan?
Well, I haven't included Bluffton in a town of Hilton Head Island strategic plan, master plan, but know that we're very connected in the region. I know that we're paying attention on the road, the adaptive traffic signal as just one case study or example here. Defining a master plan is an illustrative master plan defining the future.
It's for years. It's like 25 years in the future. That's what a master plan is. And you don't go over that after you get to the master plan.
Right.
I've done this in California, so I know a lot about master planning, and they do it very well there.
Sure they do.
Not doing well, and you're an island, so you have to make sure you're really doing it well.
You and I got here about the same time, so thank you for your patience.
Well, it doesn't matter
and
when
grace.
you got here. I have land here now,
Yep.
so I'm just like everybody else.
Thank you.
One more comment if I could, just one more, just give me a few minutes here. We're 40 years late for a master plan to really protect what we have. And we can't go back. It's just history. We can't go back. We got to go forward. But it's not too late to stop it and put a master plan together to prevent the 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag from occurring. And I've got a study. I'm going to be giving studies to y'all, and I'm happy to give it to everybody in this room. and you don't want to hear this, but it's true. Actually, tourism, out of control tourism, too much tourism can actually destroy the very community where we all live. That's something that we're going to have to really look at, and nobody's really talked about that. And I think the perfect example is check-in and check-out day. Everybody been in check-out day on Friday and Saturdays? It's bumper to bumper all the way to Bluffton. Bluffton is not helping us because we have to go through Bluffton. We got to go through Hardyville. We have one road all the way to 95. And we've got, Bluffton is just 300, prove this, prove that. Everything gets approved because we have corrupted officials that have horses in the race. So we've got to look at the tourism and figure that out. And we certainly got to defund this chamber, and for $3 or $4 or $5 million, we need to put that money towards buying up land and stopping the insanity. We don't need to promote Hilton Head. Facebook and technology does that, so get over that. And I've got more on all, I've got studies on that. Not just me talking, but we have actual studies. Thank you.
Okay, bring it back to council. We have a motion on the council to start with.
I think we've got a motion.
Got a motion, we're all set then, okay? Any more discussion by members of the council? Yes, David?
Sean, two comments were brought up at the public comment. I think you've addressed one, but I just wanted to make sure. The first one had to do with a map. It seems logical to me, and put a different way, it's an omission not to have a geographic limit as a part of the MOU, I think.
Yes, sir. We'll make sure that there's a graphic illustration that defines the project limits.
And then the other had to do with certain words that were no longer in the agreement. I'm at the point I'm ready to move forward. I think we have spent enough time dealing with trust issues. I think we are there, but I would like to, I think you said that once you get into the RFP conversations, those words would be a part of what is developed. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, sir. I think, again, I think with the scope of work, I wanted to have a level of confidence that we are 95% of the way there. We learned an awful lot in the phone calls with these high caliber engineering firms, along with Brad Strader. I want to give a 5% opportunity for them to help inform and refine the scope so that it meets all of our expectations. I believe the scope is drafted, captures previous scope documents, the intent and the areas that that needed to be addressed and incorporated. So I'm confident to move this forward.
I want to thank you and town staff. I think Senator Davis's role was pivotal in getting us to where we are. I think the county has done its job moving the ball forward as well. Mayor, I'm ready to move forward.
Thomas?
I think you touched all the bases, Sean. I think you did a good job a month ago, and you've done nothing but improve that this month. I would anticipate something coming back from Beaufort County in terms of a counter to this. I'd be pleased if this flew through, but I think we can expect some sort of a counter from Beaufort County, so let's not be surprised when that happens. I do have a very significant concern, and it pertains to duration and cost. We have continued to defer this to the extent that I'm worried that the grant funding we have from the Infrastructure Bank could be at risk. And I am relying totally on Senator Davis saying more than once in public that infrastructure bank is not at risk. And therefore, and based on Senator Davis's comment, I'll support this going forward.
Alex?
As long as the municipal consent's not there, I'm ready to roll, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Krista?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown?
Support.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes, but the proviso that I really want to see one of or more of the folks from the Bear Group on that technical working group.
We haven't
Mr.
approved the
Lennox?
technical working group yet.
Okay,
We haven't
but when we
approved
do,
We
I'm
haven't
just
approved it yet.
just making my position known.
Mr. Lennox?
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
And Mayor McKim?
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
You okay?
Thank you, sir. Could I have 10 seconds? I want to thank Mark and Josh for bringing in Mac Dufford, staff attorney. I think he's still here. Gosh, he got me a lot farther, a lot faster than I could do on my own, so thank you.
Well, Sean, you've done a great job, and you've showed true leadership.
Mr. Orlando, do we need to go in executive session, sir?
Yes, Mayor, Council, items A through E as reflected on our agenda.
Motion? All in favor, please raise the right hand. Krista, we're going into executive session.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
items to report. Mr. Stanford?
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint W. Thomas Parker Jr. to the Design Review Board to fill a vacancy to complete the term ending June 30, 2024.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve a resolution of the Town of Hilton Head Island supporting the request from Hilton Head 1 Public Service Districts for a proposed aquifer storage facility and recovery well on a portion of town-owned property.
Second that.
Question by members of the council? All in favor? Motion to adjourn?
No. Mr. Mayor, I move to approve a resolution of the Town of Hilton Head Island supporting the request from the Broad Creek Public Service District for a proposed aquifer storage and recovery well on a portion of town-owned property.
I'll second that.
Questions? All in favor, raise your right hand.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve a resolution of the Town of Hilton Head Island supporting the Hilton Head Number 1 Public Service District's request for town-owned property on Jenkins Island for a well to complete a reverse osmosis plant.
I'll second that.
Question?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that the public understands that we are approving these to move forward in concept. We are not committing to a specific site or a specific design.
Accepted. Finally, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve a resolution of the Town of Hilton Head Island authorizing the town to enter into an option agreement for the purchase of 2 parcels for a total of 1.85 acres of property located at 82 Bagall Road for a purchase price of $550,000.
Before you second that, let's vote on the last item.
I know.
We didn't vote on the last item.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, Mr. Ames made clarification on the last item before we took the vote. So let's vote on the last item before we second that motion.
Now,
Yeah, I accepted David's.
yeah, I know, but then we didn't vote on it. We just need to vote on it.
We'll call the question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'll second this motion that you just made.
Which is in regard to the purchase of 2 parcels, 1.85 acres on Bagall Road.
What's the address there again? The address again on Bagall Road?
82 Bagall Road. I have a second on that. Move we adjourn. When does hazardous duty?